Well, good morning to everybody, and a big good morning to all who are joining us online on Facebook Live, or maybe watching a little bit later on our YouTube channel. This morning, we have a pretty special treat, in my opinion, in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 11. It talks about how the fact that the saints of God overcame the enemy, the devil, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Now, we know that the blood of Jesus takes care of everything. Jesus conquered the enemy through his shed blood, but yet we also have the word of our testimony. Now, what is a testimony? That's a word that you hear a lot around the church. And basically, a testimony is when somebody says, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, this is what happened. And when it comes to us as believers, when people talk about their testimony, they talk about what God has done in their life. And we have the opportunity this morning to hear somebody's testimony, somebody's story. And it's somebody very near and dear to me. It's my niece, Kristen, who I love very, very, very dearly. And I'm so proud, so proud of everything. So I'll just stop right now before I get too sappy here. She's got to preach. So, yeah, I know. Come on up, Kristen, and let's encourage her as she comes. Sure. Just for all who are listening online and all who may be here, this story is not a story that's really suitable for young children. And so if you have young children nearby, you may want to have them go do something else for now. And for any of the kids that are here, you can, parents, you can have your kids go on out to Super Church. So, all right, here we go.
Thank you. Shut up, Wyatt. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Pastor Harry's niece, as most of you know. But I really just wanted to share my testimony today because I really, truly want people to know that we are truly a family here, and I just want people to feel comfortable to share everything that they're going through. And I've had a really, really tough life, but honestly, because of what I went through, I really am who I am today. And I don't regret anything I did, and I just want people to know that really this is truly a judgment-free place, and I just want people to really feel comfortable to share what they've been through, and that we're going to be here for all of you. I really had a rough childhood. I mean, I had a good childhood, but I had a rough childhood. My mom and dad got divorced when I was about 2 years old, and she had me, and then she soon married again and had my younger sister. And her dad wasn't, well, that's not her dad now. Her first dad, he wasn't such a nice person. He had done some bad things to me. He had molested me from the age of 7, probably till I was 13 years old. And that's when I finally decided to come out and tell my mom about it. My whole family actually never knew anything about it. And I didn't really know anything was wrong with that at the time. I was so young. And that's probably where a lot of my trauma came from. I can't really tell you a lot about my childhood, honestly, because of the pain that caused me. I really suppressed a lot of my childhood, and I honestly have no recognition of my childhood. I mean, it's just very bits and pieces because of what I went through. Soon after, I told my mom they got divorced pretty immediately, and he spent the next 7 years in jail, which is pretty crazy to me because people go to jail for a simple marijuana charge in there, and they're longer than a rapist. So to me, that's not really okay, but I can't do nothing about that. In high school, I was always really good in high school. I always had good grades. I was always very athletic. I was on my basketball team, and I really just always felt that there was something missing, and I didn't know what it was, and I just wanted to try to fit in school. And so, I mean, as you know, we're from a very, very small area, population of like 200 here. And Tioga's probably just the same. That's where I went to high school. And so really your only choices of fitting in was either to be with the party people or to be with I don't really even know what you would call them. What? No, not the nerds. I would more or less say, I would more or less say yeah, just like the people that I usually really don't fit in with, I guess. I mean, that wasn't my style. So we would party a lot and drink a lot in high school, and I mean, soon marijuana was introduced. I mean, everybody kind of smoked it. I never really seen the issue with that, but I mean, it was just really partying and drinking and I would do something here and there in high school, but it wasn't really ever a problem. But that's really where I truly felt that I fit in. I mean, everybody's happy. Everybody was laughing all the time. It made me feel loved, and it made me feel like I belonged there. And that's something that I never really had in my life. But I do come from a church-going family. My family always went to church. My uncle's always been a pastor. But, I mean, there's usually the one person in the family that really doesn't feel like, that's them. And I never really felt like that was me. And I just spent so long trying to find myself. And being with the party people, I felt like that was me. But I ended up graduating high school, and I ended up doing really good. And after I was about 17, my mom moved to Florida. And my mom was pretty much my everything. She was the only one I had growing up. I didn't have my dad. I wasn't that close to anybody in my family besides my grandparents, but I mean, my mom was truly my best friend. And she ended up moving to Florida. And that's what killed me at the time. So without her being there, I really kind of just rebelled. I was living at my dad's house, and he was never home. So I was really under no supervision. At 17 years old, I got involved with a really wrong crowd, and I knew how to manufacture methamphetamine at 17 years old. And that's what took me down like a really dark path. I'm sorry, this is going to be really hard for me to talk about. But at 17, I was doing some really terrible things. Thank you. Some things that a 17-year-old should never know how to do. But I really felt like I belonged with them, and I didn't know that what I was doing was anything bad at the time. And then after about several years of me doing that, I found my first boyfriend, and his name was James. And he's still a good family friend now. He was a good guy, but he did heroin. And I said, I'll be with you. But he said, you got to make sure I don't do heroin. I said, well, that's not a problem. I don't do that. You got to make sure I stay away from the meth. And he said that wasn't a problem. He never did it. But he ended up starting to make a lot of money. He was making like $1,500 to $2,000 a week. And then we just went down and we spiraled into a really deep hole of heroin addiction, and it just tore apart me and my family. I'm really sorry, guys. But I knew I needed to change. I just didn't know what or how to change. And at that point, I was so invested in this addiction, I didn't know what else to do. And at that point, you just become so comfortable. You just become so comfortable in that hole, and you lose your self-worth. You don't care about yourself. You really lose your self-worth and well-being. That's why it's so important. It's so important for all of us to, if you see someone who's struggling with addiction, to not judge them, to really just be there for them, because they don't have anybody else. And those people that are in their addictions, they don't have any self-worth at all. And it's so important for us to be there for them. Well, me and James, we went on this heroin addiction for, I want to say, seven years. I was addicted to heroin, and I was doing probably close to a gram or two a day. And I don't know if a lot of you know how much that is, but it's truly a lot. It really is. It's a lot. And I went to my first rehab, and it was okay. I wasn't ready to go. I felt more forced to go. And you can't force someone to get clean when they're truly not ready. You can't. And I really just did it for my family at that point in time, thinking that even if I forced myself, that I'd be okay to go, not even knowing truly how deep of a hole I got myself into. And I went to my first rehab, and I decided that it wasn't for me, and I was not ready to get clean, and I ended up, me and this girl coerced a plan together that we were just gonna leave, that we were just gonna walk out together, and we ended up hitchhiking from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, all the way back up home. And thank God today that we're okay, but that's what happened. And after that rehab, I still struggled. I still was manufacturing methamphetamine. I was selling it. I remember the one time we were in my friend's camper, and he was making it. And the camper was, I know you guys, a lot of you don't know actually what's in it, but there's really some nasty things in it, and a lot of it is just like an ethanol gas that's in it. And the camper started filling up with gas, and my friend looked at me, he said, open a window really quick, and none of us had like masks on or gas masks on or nothing like that, so I tried to get up to the window as quick as I could to open it, and I was losing my oxygen. I could feel myself dying. I knew that if I didn't get that window open to take a breath, that I was gonna die in like any second. I knew I was. And literally I felt my vision going out, I felt my body just leaving me, and finally I got that window open. And I just like took a deep breath out of the camper window, and I just took a breath in, but like even still with all these struggles, like that still was not enough for me to like realize what I was doing to myself. That was still not enough to realize that I shouldn't be doing this to myself. And once you're in with these people, it's just you don't feel like you're worthy enough to get out of that situation. Like, and it's not that you don't feel like you're worthy. It's just your total loss of your total feeling of emotion is completely gone. You have no sense of emotion. You have no sense of being, and that's not really your mind. That's really what the drugs are just doing to your body. It's just you can't control it. And after a while of doing that, I got arrested for my first time. I think it was for a retail theft charge, and I'm not sure if I had drug possession or not, but I'm pretty sure it's for a retail theft charge, and I got put on probation. That was when I went to jail for I was only in jail for like 60 days at a time. I got put on probation, and they sent me from the jail to another rehab. It's called Pyramid in Altoona. And that's when I truly realized what I was doing to myself, and that's when I truly was awakened, I guess you can say. And I actually really started doing good for a while. I started doing good for myself, and I decided that I really missed my mom, and I wanted to move to Florida, and I wanted to try it out, and I thought that Florida might be the place for me to go. So I went to Florida to live with my mom, and I was doing really good. I was like sober for 5 years, and I was doing great. I had a job. First I got a job at Dunkin' Donuts, and I got a better job serving at Lucky Dale, and I was making really good money. And then I was offered a better paying job at Wing House. I don't know if you know what a Wing House is, but it's pretty much like a Hooters. So not much clothing is provided as your work uniform. And that's when I really just got introduced to some really, really, really rich men. And most guys that came in there were very rich, and it was, as you can imagine, pretty much only men that was coming in there because they wanted to see half-naked women working, pretty much. So meeting all these rich guys, and that's when I started to kind of start partying again. At this point, I had moved out of my mom's house, and I had lived on my own. So that's when I started partying again. And all these rich guys were doing a lot of cocaine and I mean a lot of it. I mean, everything that I had known up here had pretty much got thrown out the window because Florida is a whole new type of chaotic than it is up here. I mean, up here, yes, it's bad, but it's really country and you don't really see it as much. But down in Florida, it is truly, you can't ignore it. Like, you can't ignore the problem that Florida has. I mean, it really needs a hand from God to be healed. I mean, these men were doing, I went from doing grams and stuff, I mean, these men were doing ounces a night. I mean, and that's like a bag like this of cocaine every night. And I was doing it with them, and then soon after that, I didn't get fired from my job, but I couldn't keep my job because I was up all night, and I was up for days, and I couldn't keep my job. So after that, that's when I really started to see my decline again. And I mean, I just threw 5 years of sobriety out the window in literally 2 seconds. It was a 2-second decision. And that's another reason why nobody should ever look at someone bad for relapsing. Because literally the decision to relapse happens in a split second. I mean, you could be sober 5 years, 1 second, and literally in 2 seconds, your whole life can be thrown out the window. And I mean, it's just that quick. And after a while of doing that, I met my baby dad. I met my first, Jay was I have 2 daughters. That is the one I have here is Aaliyah. But my first daughter, her name is Liana. And I met her dad. And he didn't do drugs. He knew what I did, and he just wanted me to be better. And before I got too deep down the rabbit hole, I changed for him because I really fell in love with him. And we had our first child. And then soon after having my first child, I went through probably the worst postpartum depression someone could ever go through. I knew about postpartum depression, but I truly did not know what it can do to yourself. I had no self-worth for myself. At the time, I had no love for my child, and I don't want people to think that's a bad thing because I truly love her now, but depression can tear you apart so bad that you love your child, but like that emotional connection is just not there with this postpartum depression, and this is a everyday struggle for women who have children. And it's so sad because it could just tear someone apart within a second and you don't understand why. And I was trying to tell my family that this is what I was going through, but they're just like, yeah, right, Kristen, you just want to be on drugs again. This is just what you do. You can't be that depressed. This is just what you do, Kristen. And I try to say, no, I'm truly going through a really hard time, and no one really believed me. No one believed me that I was depression. They just thought I was back on drugs again, and I truly wasn't. But at that point in time, me and Liana's father broke up, and that was truly really hard on me. And then that just made my depression worse, and I lost my place to live because I didn't want to live with him after a bad breakup. And I was homeless on the streets. I was just going from house to house all the time. And I just got back into drugs really bad. And it was like worse than I ever thought it could be. That's when I was introduced to crack cocaine. And that, it floods the streets of Tarpon and Holiday down where I'm from. And I just got really bad into that. When I took a hit of that, all my pain, all my emotion, every hurt that I was feeling, it just went away. It was just gone within a second. And I didn't know that something like that could just take all your pain away. But it truly does, and that's why a lot of people really turn to these drugs, because it truly does take all your pain away. And so I was really bad into that for a long time, and I was bouncing around from house to house, and then I started to run out of money. And my friends had taught me to. I seen a couple people go into stores and just come out with a whole grocery cart full of food that they didn't pay for. And then they would take it and take the food that they got in the stores and go sell it for half price on the streets, and that's how they made their money. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds like a really easy way to make money. I mean, they're only in the store for 5 minutes, and they come out and they have a couple $100s in their pocket or whatever. So I started doing that really quickly, and I was doing that for a really long time before I got caught. I mean, that was literally how I made my livelihood. And I wouldn't really call much of a livelihood. I mean, I would go a month or two without eating and be perfectly fine. I mean, I would think I was fine, but I clearly wasn't, but I would think I was. And somehow in that time being, I got a bartending job. I don't know how, but I did. And I was working, bartending. I mean, bars down there, bars up here close early. Bars down there don't close till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was up all night long till the early morning hours cleaning and working, and I was doing coke, bartending all the time because that was the only way I could stay awake. And I felt like I could just talk to people better. I felt like I could just make more money that way because I was just so much more sociable. And that truly wasn't the case. I ended up losing that job because people could just tell that I was on something. So I ended up losing that job for that. And soon after losing that job, that's when I moved to Holiday. And that's when my life just got even worse. Even worse than I could imagine that it already was. And Holiday was just literally a town over, but Holiday is flooded with gangs down there. The gangs are really, really bad down in Florida. And a lot of the guys that I started running around with down there, they worked with the Bloods. The Bloods, if whoever don't know, are a huge gang system. I mean, throughout the whole United States and probably out of the United States. I mean, it is a huge gang system. I didn't actually get into the gang, but I lived with them, and I was there when they held their meetings, and I've watched them shoot people. I've watched them. I've literally seen people die right in front of me. And that was just how it was. I mean, if you snitched on them, they would shoot you. If you did them wrong, they would shoot you. And if they didn't kill you, they would give you a bag of heroin or coke that they knew was bad and they knew was going to kill you, and they'd give it to you because they didn't want you to be around anymore because you're a snitch. And if you even if you aren't in the gangs down there, they controlled the whole entire Holiday. So even people who weren't in a gang, they controlled the drugs to all the people on the streets that were. So in my point of view, I just made sure I was good with them and was on their good side because I didn't want anything bad to happen to me. And they did protect me. They protected me for a long time. And something ended up coming up missing in one of their trap houses one time, and I just so happened to be in the bathroom, even though I truly didn't take it. Me and the 2 other people that were in the bathroom, we all got sat in a row. We all got sat in a line in the room, and there was 3 people standing in front of us with a gun to each of our heads, and they were asking us who took it, who took it. Of course, we were all denying it. I still to this day don't know who took it. I ended up getting pistol whipped on the side of my head and beat to a bloody pulp by my best friend at the time. And I mean, I obviously clearly wasn't my best friend, but I felt like I was so close to dying so many times, and I didn't care. That situation did not affect me at all. It just didn't affect me. I still kept using. I was still smoking crack every day, and the gang, they always wanted to make sure that you were high. So even if I didn't have money or something, they were still giving it to me because they didn't want to lose people as customers. They didn't want to lose our money when we did have it, because I usually always had money somehow. I would figure out a way. And I was doing a lot of illegal things to get that money. And there was really a time I was working this one day, and I was away from home helping my friend work, doing some tree company one day, and I couldn't get a hold of my people. I was too far away from them at the time. So he said, I'll get you some heroin. I'll get you a fix because I was really sick. And so they went through his people. And every once in a while, I usually go through somebody else. I would always usually go through my people that I know is safe what I'm getting and I know what I'm getting. But I decided to let these people get it for me. And, they would tell you, oh, people died off this bag. And, like, other people would be like, oh, wow, this must be some really good stuff. Let's just get a whole bunch of it because somebody died off it. So I was like, okay, this must be good. I was like, well, my tolerance is way too high, so it's not gonna kill me. So when I got it, my friend was like, why don't you just snort just like a tiny, tiny bit just to try it first? And I don't know. I know this was God doing this. I know 100% fact that this was God doing it because I would have never snorted that any other time, any other place. I would have never snorted that because I was using a needle at the time. I mean, I haven't used a needle in like 4 years at this point, but at this point in time, I was using a needle really bad, and I know this was God holding me back on this. I snorted, I want to say like a grain of sand worth of this. And all of a sudden I started seeing weird. I don't know how to describe it, like things, I just couldn't see. Things were like wavy. It was very psychedelic looking, and I wasn't on any hallucinogens. I was completely sober before I did this, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe, and I was just hyperventilating, and all I knew how to say is, please Lord, please Lord, please Lord, please Lord. That's all I could get out of my mouth. And because I knew I was dying. I knew I was dying. In my heart, I knew I was going to die. And that's all I could get out of my mouth. And I just remember my friends were freaking out in the front seat, and they pulled over in a gas station. I just remember taking a freezing cold cup of water and pouring it on top of my head to wake me out of it. And then once I poured the water over myself, I just gasped for air. And the rest of that night, about every 30 to 40 minutes, I would have a panic attack so bad to the point that I thought I was going to die. So I don't know what this stuff was. I really still to this day don't know what this stuff was, but it was not what I thought it was supposed to be. I thought it was supposed to be heroin. But I know that was truly God that saved me from that day. And I wasn't even seeking him at that point, but he is still so faithful to be there for you. Down there, it's so hard where I was staying that even if people want to get clean where I was, it's so hard for them too, because if you compare it to up here, from here to the 7-Eleven, you have quite a few houses. So imagine from here to the gas station up here, if every single house on both sides of the street was a drug house, if every single one was a drug house, everywhere I walked like that, that's how it was everywhere you went down there. You literally can't escape the drug houses down there. So even if you wanted to get clean, it's all around you. And even if I didn't have money, there was people riding up in cars next to me, handing me free drugs out the window because they wanted me to call them when I did have money and come get my drugs from them. It's like even if you don't have money, people are still trying to get you high because they know how deep this can entangle people. At this point, I was in and I was out of jail, in and out of jail. I've spent probably almost 2 years worth of my life incarcerated or in a rehab. And 2 years is a lot of life that you have to live. People really take life for granted. Life is not a promise, guys. Life is not a promise. Tomorrow is never promised to any of us. Whether we're on drugs or not, tomorrow is never promised. Life is so precious. A couple of my friends down there were in a sex trafficking ring. And I know I was so close a couple times to being sold, but I know the Lord was pulling on my shoulder, telling me not to go with these people. And I didn't. But I later found out that these people that I was hanging out with were part of a sex trafficking ring. And down there they had about a place the size of this and about 2 more places about this size, so 3 buildings about this size. One was an elementary school full of children, and the other 2 houses were of just women ranging from ages a couple months to about age 30. So they were taking even children a couple months old to the range of age of 30. They would sit outside of a Walmart in Hudson, Florida. They would sit outside of a Walmart down there, and they would wait for a woman and a child of young age to somewhat their liking to come out of Walmart, and they would somehow lure them with them, take them down to a river, and at this river they would be priced. They would be priced from a range of $10,000 to $25,000, and anybody could bring a person down to this river and get that kind of amount of money in just a second. Anybody could do it. And these people ended up getting busted, of course, but I mean, it was a huge thing down in Florida. I mean, it was on the news. It was a really, really bad situation. But a lot of children ended up being saved, and a lot of women ended up being saved, but a lot of them didn't. And everyone says to get clean for yourself, but how can you get clean for yourself when you have no value for yourself? Somehow in my deepest, darkest days, I still found some kind of value to hold on to. And once I found out I was pregnant with Aaliyah, my second daughter, when I was in jail. And that's when I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this to her. And my daughter truly saved my life. My daughter really truly saved my life. And as much, my uncle said at one time, as much as I gave her a life, she gave me life too. And that's so true. And I just want to help everybody get clean, but what we need to understand about people trying to get clean is that we can't help. I mean, we can give them advice, but we can't help them. We have to wait till they are ready. People need to hit absolute rock bottom to know that they are ready to get clean, and they have to do that themselves. As sad as it is, they have to do that themselves. But for me, I've heard people tell me all the time, well, God wasn't there. God was never there for me. God truly was there for you. You just probably weren't listening. Because God was always there for me. I just wasn't listening to him. And he was still there for me after I got clean. And another thing that addicts always worry about is that the cravings will never go away. But that's a lie. And don't let people tell you that cravings don't go away, because they do go away. I mean, mind you, it takes a year or two, but the cravings, they will go away. And you can get clean. And it is very possible, and I'm standing here to prove it to everyone today that it is possible. Before I moved up here, this very last time I was living with he was textbook psychopath. But he was giving me everything I needed. I mean, he had a settlement, so right before I moved up here this last time, we were buying an ounce every other day of heroin and about half an ounce of crack every other day. And between the two of us, we weren't selling it, between the two of us, we would go through it all. And I mean, he was textbook psychopath. He was very, very, very abusive, very, very controlling. But I never let him control and tell me how worthless I was, because I knew that it was a lie. And I knew I was coming up here. I knew I was coming up here to get clean, and I knew I was going to be okay. And that's exactly what I did. And God has just been so faithful. He really has been so faithful. getting clean, going through the detox of all this. That's the easy part. You know, anybody can detox, but it truly takes a strong person to stay clean. It truly takes a strong-minded person to stay away from those people. And I truly had to change every single little aspect of my life. And that's the one mistake that I made every other time I tried to get clean, is there was always one thing that I wouldn't change, whether that's Facebook, or whether that's that one friend that I think is still okay to hang out with. Well, that one friend is not. I mean, I truly dumped each and every single person I was talking to. I haven't activated my cell phone in a year. I haven't had Facebook in a year. I don't even listen to rap music anymore, because that's a trigger for me. I mean, it put me in the mindset to just, pump me up and go party, because when I listen to rap music, even now, that's what I think about, because that's the type of music I would always listen to when I was getting high or partying. I mean, you have to really, really change every single aspect. If you don't think you need to change it, that's the one you need to change in order to overcome all this. The cravings do go away, and your self-worth truly comes back. You just have to be patient. Be patient with yourself and be patient with God, because He is so faithful. And He will come to you every time, and I promise you that. There's been times where my daughter will be really fussy and I can't, console her. And I'll hug her and I'll just repeat over and over, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus. And those words are so powerful, because she truly gets consoled every time. And I'm crying because, those 4 words are so powerful that we all take advantage of it, and we all take it for granted. All of us, we take for granted how much power the Lord really has over us, because we truly can get over and get through anything with a good support system and the love of our Father, because I'm standing right here to prove it to everybody. And I'll always be so grateful for the help that God gave me, and I'm even grateful for the bad things I went through, because I can relate to almost anybody and relate to almost any kind of situation they're going through, and I can truly help them. But I want everybody to know that this is truly a safe place to talk about hard things, and that if I can't help you, my Uncle Harry says it so many times, that we can give you somebody who can. And I hope that, this story helps some people, and I'm always here for anybody who wants to talk, or anybody who's going through something. I'll always be here for anybody. But after the service today, if anybody has prayer for anything, or if they want to be freed of addiction or anything today, I really feel like today's a good day. If somebody wants to be delivered from anything today, please come see my Uncle Harry or Missy, and we will get deliverance for people today. But thank you.
Amen. You are never beyond the love of God. Never. You're never beyond the love of God. We're going to be closing with a song here in just a moment. And as we close, if there's anybody that needs prayer of any kind, if you're struggling with addiction and or just some life-controlling aspect, maybe you wouldn't necessarily call it an addiction, but if it's something life-controlling, we would love the opportunity to pray with you this morning. And so I'm going to be up here. I'm going to ask Kristen to join me up front as well to pray for folks, and have Pastor Michael in the back. So if you need prayer of any kind, we would love the opportunity to pray with you. So let's go ahead and stand as we close with a song.